Welcome, one and all, to another Pacific 414 episode review. I'm your host, Mike, and in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the Bad Batch Episode 8 Reunion. And in this episode of Pacific 414 episode review, there will be some spoilers. So if you don't want to hear about what happened in Reunion, then please skip this episode until you've watched the latest episode of The Bad Batch, and then come back. What ends up happening in this episode is we pick back up on the planet Braca, where we left off the last time in Battle Scars, and we see that Wrecker is training Omega on how to disarm ordnance. Training her which wires to cut and letting her know that, she doesn't have a lot of time to waste when it comes to snipping the wires and snipping the right wires. In this training session, he uses a smoke grenade instead of live ordnance like an explosive. And of course, he doesn't tell her that it's only a smoke grenade until after the fact, when she snips a wire and the bomb ends up going off. But again, it was a smoke grenade. Omega doesn't find out until Wrecker starts laughing and they've already run for cover. And he even tells her, "You think I'm going to give you a live bomb for this test?" No. So Echo stops by and says that Hunter needs him back at the cruiser because the Bad Batch plan, Clone Force 99's plan, is to reactivate parts of the Jedi cruiser so they can get the ordnance that's inside the cruiser, all the proton torpedoes, any live ordnance that's in there. And the reason why they want to do that is because they want to get enough supplies, not only for themselves, but also to pay off Sid and the debt that they owe to Sid. Well, as they're doing that, back on Camino, the Empire is alerted to Clone Force 99 being on Braca due to the Scavengers, and they dispatch Crosshairs and his troops to Braca to bring Clone Force 99 back alive. Because as the Prime Minister of Camino points out, Clone Force 99 could prove to be very valuable because of their skills. And what ends up happening back on Braca is Wrecker and Echo notice that they're being spotted by said Scavengers, and they give chase. They manage to stun a couple, and by the time they manage to stun the third one, they all have to retreat back to the Jedi cruiser, where they can begin salvaging and scavenging for anything that's of any use to them. So you see them go into the munitions bay, and that's where Wrecker and Omega are conversing, talking about what's in there, and that's when Wrecker sees the proton torpedo after Tech restores power to the cruiser. Omega even asks if Wrecker's going to teach her how to disarm a proton torpedo, and he essentially tells her that she needs to get her own. So then we see Tech over on the bridge, and Omega's on the bridge. They're trying to gather all the important data off the drives on the bridge computers because they weren't scuttled. So Tech is doing his magic to try to get all that information. He even has the memory drive to transfer all the rest of the data in. A proximity alarm goes off, and Tech says it's probably just a malfunction, but it's not a malfunction. It's the Empire. So the Empire is there. It's 3 shuttles 3 loads of troops, and they're all commanded by Crosshairs, and their mission is to go into the Jedi cruiser and apprehend Clone Force 99 along with Omega. So they end up going into the Jedi cruiser, confronting Clone Force 99 after Clone Force 99 lures them to the artillery deck. Of course, that doesn't happen until Tech taps into the comm system to find out where the regs are headed. Once they get to the artillery deck, Tech manages to tap into the cannons and set off the cannons, causing some of the scaffolding and the worn out hull and damaged plating from the cruiser to come crashing down onto the deck below, and they manage to proceed to make their escape to the ion engines. And of course, back on Camino, the Prime Minister is having issues with the Empire. The Empire really doesn't want to go after Clone Force 99. They want to exterminate them. And Crosshairs was even given the order to terminate Clone Force 99 at one point. But of course, the Kevin Owens, they want Omega back, and they want Clone Force 99 because of their special skills, and they have hired somebody to help them bring back Omega and Clone Force 99, but more specifically, Omega. So, back on Baraka, Clone Force 99 goes into the ion engine. They slide down to the very bottom of the engine. Unbeknownst to them, Crosshairs has a clone trooper on the bridge, and Crosshairs gives the order to activate the ion engine. Well, since Wrecker is carrying some ordnance and some bombs, they come up with a plan to help expedite their escape by placing bombs in an arch around the main frame of the ion engine and then setting off those explosives. And that ends up happening just as Crosshairs and a few troopers are trying to basically kill them, is what they're trying to do. Because that's the order that they've been given, is to terminate Clone Force 99. Well, the ion engine frame comes down, Crosshairs gets burned, Clone Force 99 does manage to survive, and Hunter and Omega make their way back to Clone Force 99's ship, the Marauder. When they get to the Marauder, they see that the clone troopers who were there to inspect the ship to see if anyone else was on the Marauder, well, those clone troopers are all taken out. And Omega even asks who could have done such a thing. Well, we find out who did such a thing. It's an old bounty hunter friend. And no, it's not Fennec Shand, and it's not a young Boba Fett. It's not IG-88. No, it's not even Bosk. It is none other than Cad Bane. Cad Bane makes his return, and his job is to take Omega, which he does, by stunning Hunter and leaving with, I guess you could call her the key to everything, since that's what she seems to be. The next thing we see is a helmet view of Hunter after he regains consciousness, and we see Tech trying to pull Hunter back into the Marauder, and we hear Wrecker say incoming because Crosshairs, and the clone troopers are in hot pursuit on their position. The Marauder takes off, they leave, and Hunter says to the group, he took her, we have to go and get her, and he doesn't reveal who took Omega to the rest of the group, but we all know that it's Cad Bane. So it looks like the next episode will be in search of Omega to retrieve her from the clutches of Cad Bane. Now, overall, I did like this episode. I do like the character of Cad Bane, And, a lot of it does have to do is because he's that old Western gunslinger type of character. And for anyone who knows me, they know that aside from, liking things like Star Wars, Star Trek, and speaking of Star Trek, I know some of you are saying it's blasphemous for me to do an episode review or a Star Wars show wearing a Star Trek shirt. But again, like I said, I like Star Wars, I like Star Trek. It's just part of who I am. And you know what? Every now and then I'm going to wear a shirt, regardless of whether it fits the topic of discussion or not, that I like. And that's just how it's going to be. But, Cad Bane, he harkens back to those, old Western bounty hunter characters. Know, think about, Clint Eastwood and the good, the bad, the ugly, and several of the other spaghetti westerns. So it's in, that kind of vein. Another reason I like the character of Cad Bane is because of his voice actor, Corey Burton. Now, being a fan of Generation 1 Transformers, well, Corey Burton voiced several characters on Generation 1 Transformers, Spike Witwicky, Sunstreaker, Shockwave, just to name a few. But I've always enjoyed his particular work, and there are times where you can definitely recognize his voice, and also I don't want to forget that he also voiced the character of Count Dooku, and of course, in Transformers reboot, Transformers Animated, he once again voiced Shockwave, but he also voiced Megatron. So, part of me, always follows certain voice actors, Bradley Baker, and Corey Burton, of course, Frank Welker, Peter Cullen, just to name a few. Just hear him do that character's voice again. It's great. Plus, the character's a great character. Villain or not, the character is great, and we've seen the character grow throughout the Clone Wars, and it's nice to see that they're picking up with him right here in the Bad Batch. Getting back to the main part of this episode, other than the fact of liking Cad Bane, it was nice to see Crosshairs again. We hadn't seen him since episode 3. There were some things I didn't like about this episode, and I'm sure somebody's not going to like what I have to say. But, it reminded me a lot of season 2 of The Mandalorian, the episode The Tragedy, where, Mando and Grogu go to the planet where the Jedi Temple is, and Grogu is communing with, the stone in the center of the temple. You see that energy wave in the center, and Moff Gideon's Star Cruiser shows up with the Dark Troopers, and they end up kidnapping Grogu. So, it reminds me a lot of that. It, definitely feels like they're going along the same lines as they did with The Mandalorian, where now instead of it being Grogu that our band of heroes have to go and rescue, as it was for Fennec Shand, Cara Dune, Bo-Katan, just to name a few, now it's going to be Hunter, Wrecker, Echo, and Tech going to rescue Omega, and they're going back to Kamino. They're going to have to deal with the Kaminoans. They're going to have to deal not only with Crosshairs, but the rest of the clone troopers that are there on Kamino. And who knows how this is all going to transpire. But, I don't know that it's smart to repeat the same story thread that was already pretty much gone over in season 2 of The Mandalorian. I noticed that this episode was written by Dave Filoni, so maybe he was writing this episode at the same time they were, starting production of season 2 of The Mandalorian. I don't know the exact time frame as to when these two series, may have overlapped, if at all. I'm just saying that as part of my thought process. But, this has become Mandalorian 2.0 with Omega replacing Grogu, and Hunter is pretty much Din Djarin. And of course, you have Echo, Tech, and Wrecker as the supporting cast, even though you could say that they're part of the main cast in this series. Nah, you just replace Mando with Hunter and Grogu with Omega. And that's pretty much how it is. Not that I'm hating on the series. I'm not hating on the series. I just don't understand why they would use the same story thread twice within a span of a year. I I don't get that. It doesn't make sense to me. I think they could have gone a different route instead of having to go rescue Omega. It's the Bad Batch constantly on the run, trying to evade not only bounty hunters but also the Empire. But then again, even saying that, that still goes on the line of the Mandalorian, because you had bounty hunters going after Grogu, you had the Empire going after Grogu because of Grogu's blood, and the midichlorians, obviously, they're creating a clone, whether it's Snoke, whether it was Palpatine. A lot of people say it was Palpatine. Don't know. Don't really care right now. Let that part of the story play out when it plays out. But, you've got two series that are way too similar at this point, and it doesn't need to be that way. So, if you want me to say I hate this episode, that's not the truth. The only thing I hate is repeated story threads that have already been used. Overall, this is a good episode. Again, I like the fact that you see the Bad Batch crew trying to make a life for themselves. They know what they have to do to survive. They know that they need to gather supplies that they can trade and sell to other people in order to gain food, fuel, supplies, whatever. And of course, Cad Bane. Cad Bane is a great character, and here's hoping we actually get to see him in episode 9 and we don't have to wait, another 3-4 episodes to see him again. Especially since, getting back to what I said earlier, we saw Crosshairs, but we only seen him in Aftermath, and then, seeing him in Replacements, and then we've had to wait 5 episodes before we see him again. So we will see where Dave Filoni and the staff decide to take the rest of the series. Hopefully, it's in a good direction, and hopefully it's not the same plot threads repeated over and over again. But that remains to be seen, and so far from what I've seen, it looks like we might be getting a little more of the same, which, as I mentioned last week, I've seen plenty of the same storylines in Star Trek on various series, whether it be in the original series, Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise. I've seen it, and I would just like to see something new, something different. And just gonna have to wait. So, this is my review. If you like what you see here, please give this video a thumbs up. If you don't like it, thumbs down. Share this video with your friends. And if you like this or any other content here on the PACIFIC414 YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Until the next episode review, take care.